Regardless of whether you're for or against the adoption of electric vehicles, we all have to admit that they do take a few changes and a lot of getting used to. But Renault want to make that change as simple as possible, and that's why the new all-electric Renault Scenic E-tech is one of the easiest cars to live with, regardless of whether it's electric. After all, there's a reason why it won World Car of the Year. Hi guys, I'm Tish and welcome back to the John Banks Review YouTube channel. I'm so excited, and everyone else at John Banks is as well, because finally our Renault Scenic E-tech demonstrators have arrived. And that means not only you guys get to take them for a spin, but I do as well. And I've been really looking forward to spending some time with this car because I want to know exactly why it won World Car of the Year. And it's taken just a very short drive to realise there are so many thoughtful features that make this car very easy to live with and just blast it above all of its competition. So if you want to find out what all of those thoughtful things are, then please keep watching. And if you do like new car reviews and car content, then hit that subscribe button and you can see them right here on the John Banks Review YouTube channel. And of course, if you did want to take a Renault Scenic for a spin, which I definitely recommend, you can do that by clicking the link down below and chatting to one of our sales associates. But first of all, let's talk about something which is, of course, very important to a lot of people when it comes to electric vehicles, and that is range, of which the Renault Scenic has two different versions, and I think you're going to be very impressed with both. The standard and most affordable is a 60 kilowatt-hour battery, which gets a predicted range of 260 miles on a full charge, which is right up there with most of the Renault Scenic's competition. However, it's the 87 kilowatt-hour battery which goes way further, 379 miles claimed. That, folks, is one of the best ranges that you can bag for the money. And of course, whilst range has been a very important factor when it came to developing the batteries of the Renault Scenic, they're also pretty clever as well. Renault claims the Scenic's new nickel magnesium cobalt cell chemistry boosts energy density by 6%. On top of that, each of the battery's 12 individual components can be replaced if they fail, making the battery serviceable to an extent. Renault have also had a collaboration with French firefighters all the way since 2010, and that still runs to today. Behind the rear passenger seat, you'll find a kill switch to the battery, and actually an access port, so firefighters can directly put water onto the battery should it be necessary. Of course, everybody that knows their stuff about electric cars knows that battery fires are pretty rare, but there's something that a lot of people worry about. So Renault have put this in place to put a lot of people's minds at rest. As well as gaining more range, the larger battery also gets more power. The 60 kilowatt-hour model has a 167 brake horsepower electric motor, and that gets it from 0 to 62 in 8.6 seconds. That time is on par with the entry-level Skoda Enyaq and the Hyundai Ioniq 5. The 87 kilowatt-hour battery model, however, has a more powerful 215 brake horsepower electric motor, and that drops the 62 Sprint to just below 8 seconds. So whilst having a sporty Esprit trimline, it doesn't particularly have any really fast motors, but let's face it, all electric cars feel very fast because as soon as you put your foot down, you get that instant acceleration and plenty of torque. So the Renault Megane kind of feels sporty all of the time. It's also got a slightly firmer setup compared to some of its competitors. There's lots of drive modes, and I love the way that you can change these drive modes. So there's actually a button right on the steering wheel, and this means that you can sit in eco most of the time to save your range, and then if you quickly want to hop into sport mode to get a little bit more out of the car and demand a little bit more power, you can do that. Once sport mode is engaged, the throttle response is much sharper and it becomes a little bit firmer in its suspension, and it really is quite an exciting car to drive. Like I said, it doesn't have any versions which will absolutely sprint from 0 to 62 in the blink of an eye, but I don't think it needs to have any of those. But it isn't just the ownership that Renault are trying to simplify. They also want to make the buying process as simple as possible. First of all, you choose between those two battery options, and then there's just 3 simple trim levels. The entry-level Techno, the mid-range Sporty Esprit Alpine, and the top of the range Iconic. The model that I'm featuring today is the Sporty Esprit Alpine. This has elements which have been inspired by the F1 brand division of Renault. You'll find those really fancy wheels which are slightly more sporty than the other versions of the Renault Scenic. But all cars get this really lovely front grille design. Of course, this isn't a combustion model, so there's no need for too much cooling. Instead, you get this really lovely twinkly grille which almost melts into the exterior of the car. You also get the very slim and sporty headlamps and also the instantly recognisable daytime running lights which are featured across a lot of the other Renault products. The Scenic is all round larger than its all-electric sibling, the Megane. It's about 30 centimetres longer, around 10 centimetres wider, and also it's about 7 centimetres taller. And of course, it also gets a bigger boot. It's around 100 litres more than the all-electric Megane, making boot space inside the Scenic 545 litres. That is very, very impressive. In fact, the only cars that really beat it are the massive Skoda Enyaq and also the Tesla Model Y. But I think for most families, you'll find that this is a huge amount of space. The only downside for me is there's no adjustable boot floor which brings it up completely flush. This makes it slightly awkward for loading items in, for getting dogs into the boot. I can't see it being a problem for most families, but if you are going to be putting a dog in the boot often, this might not be the electric car for you. At first glance, you might think that this all-electric Megane E-tech doesn't share much with the original Renault Megane MPV, but other than the name, they do share something else, and that's their ethos for making family life as easy as possible. Now stick with me here. Remember when you used to watch old films and you'd see all these cool cars from the future and they always had loads of gadgets? Now, this doesn't have a deployable hoverboard or anything like that, but it does have this pull-down centre armrest. And maybe not as cool as a hoverboard, but this is still pretty cool. Pull this armrest down, lift this section up here, and it reveals almost like a multimedia system. So, you've got the 2 USB-C ports, and then you've got this lovely little groove in the centre where you can run your cables through it, a couple of cup holders, and then you've got these little pull-out areas. Now what these do is they have little rubber grooves, and you can slot your mobile phone inside of them. And actually, it stays in there. You have to almost force it in. And it's very, very tight in there. You can see that that's not going anywhere. And what that means is when you're sitting in the back, you can actually watch things on your mobile phone or on your iPad. You can actually run one all the way across that if you've got a really big iPad. And that almost makes a multimedia system for the rear seat passengers, which I think is so cool. And the fixture and fittings of this are great as well. With a lot of Renault products, they were sometimes a little bit harsh about the fact that they weren't always the best fit and finish, but these feel great. They have a lovely manoeuvrability about them, and they actually feel very, very secure, nothing flimsy. Now, pull down this centre section here, and then it becomes just your central armrest. And then also you can pull down once again this whole central system, and then that becomes through loading. How handy is that? Stepping into the front cabin, and this is such a wonderful place to be. It really feels very futuristic, but also very comfortable and convenient. Now, as I mentioned, this is the Esprit Alpine trim. So you will find flashes of blue, which is the Alpine colours, all around the cabin. Now, there is subtle bits of blue, including the stitching on the seats, the stitching on the steering wheel, and one of my favourite things, which is the blue on these seat belts. However, there are some less subtle flashes of blue, and that includes completely blue floors. Now this is definitely going to be contrasting. I think it's actually pretty cool, but let me know down below, do you like the blue floors or not? You'll also get blue in the door cards, which are felt lined, which are really nice, and also you get these really nice blue door cards as well. If you don't want to go for a full blue interior, then you can opt for some of the other specifications, which are a little bit less in your face. But personally, I think it's really cool. You also get this contrasting grey dashboard and matching roof lining as well. As you can see, everything is focused towards the driver. And just like in the rear, you also get some customisable areas for the front seat passengers as well. You get some armrest storage within here, where you will find 2 USB chargers at the front. That makes 6 USB-C chargers so far inside this cabin. You also get a little bit of armrest storage, and then in this centre console you get these little dividers, which mean you can create extra cup holders or take them out completely and use that as a larger storage space. You also get some wireless charging, which just sits below this touchscreen. The touchscreen is fitted in a portrait orientation, and then you also have a fully digital instrument cluster, which almost blends fully together in this one section. This looks really nice, and it's nice to have a slightly different setup in the Renault Scenic with the portrait orientation compared to other vehicles which always opt for landscape. And let's go back to talking about all the ways Renault have made it really easy to live with the Scenic. And next up, I'm going to talk about those pesky safety features. Of course, these are now compliant if you want to sell a new car in Europe, regardless of whether it's electric or combustion. And these are features which include things like anti-collision warning, traffic sign recognition, speed warnings, lane assist. And all of these features have to be present, and they also have to all turn back on once you've exited the car. And I know this can be slightly annoying, even if they are in place to make sure they keep us nice and safe. But Renault have found a clever way of making this easier for the person living with the car, and they have a personal setting. Now this personal setting can be accessed using a button on the right hand side, and you can adjust it to have all of your favourite things turned on or off. Say you want lane assist off but traffic sign recognition on, and then when you get in the car you simply press one button rather than having to dig around in all the screens, which I think is very clever. One of the best things about Renault products is their use of the Google-based infotainment system. This means it's so easy to use when driving, and you can pretty much jump in a new car and understand how to use it because it will feel very familiar. It also means that you don't necessarily have to use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I haven't plugged it in this car, and that's very rare for me. You can search for different destinations either using the touchscreen, or you can also use the voice activated system. Get me directions to Renault Ipswich.
John Banks Renault Ipswich is 35 minutes from your location by car in light traffic.
The great thing about this is not only does it tell me that it's 35 minutes to get to my destination, but it also tells me that it's 22 miles and I'm going to arrive with 35% of charge. Now, if I wanted to add an EV charger to this destination, I could also do that. And this is the great thing about the Scenic, it's very connected. It also will use battery technology to precondition the battery if I set a charging destination, meaning it should start to charge quicker than if I didn't precondition it. And speaking of charge, when it's time to top up, the Scenic can take up to 150 kilowatts on a public fast charger with the big battery and 130 kilowatts for the smaller battery. The result is both models take just over half an hour to go from 15 to 80%. In terms of AC charging, the Scenic can take up to 22 kilowatts, which often you have to upgrade to on competitors. Most home chargers have a 7.4 kilowatt capacity, and in this case it takes the small battery just over 9 hours to go from 0 to 100% and the big battery nearly 13 hours to do the same. But the aim would be to top up little and often. I have to say, working at Renault at the moment with a product like the Renault Scenic on offer, and with many new products still in the pipeline from Renault, it really is a great time to be working for the brand. And we can't wait to share the Renault Scenic and the rest of our products with more and more people. So if you did want to schedule your test drive, then you can do that down below. And let me know, what do you think of the Scenic? Does it deserve to win World Car of the Year? Or is there something more deserving on your list? Let me know in the comments down below. I really hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more, then you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button. Until next time, guys. See you later.